Hi everyone. So here we are um, on YouTube. It happened. I'm back in Turkey in my family's house. It's a bit late. Sorry to upload the video this late. I won't be uploading this late. I will be uploading earlier in the day on Mondays and Thursdays, most probably. But yeah, it's been crazy. I just decided to come back. I had to act quickly. So yeah, I'm in self quarantine. I was jet lagged, so I'm coming slowly back to teaching, working. I hope you're all well, and please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any problems, any health issue. Take good care of yourselves, and um, yeah, if you have problems around housing and food, tell me. I will do my best to connect you with the chair of the department or some person who might offer some help. Let's do this. So the way I want to do this is I'm just going to talk a little bit about the readings that we have for today, and then I will want you to comment on the video, and through the comments you can have a discussion among yourselves. So as far as I remember, where we left was we were discussing if we are living in a disenchanted world, as Weber was saying. If we are living in a secular world, in an iron cage, in this gray world that magic has left, right? And for example, Marx would say no to this question of if you're living in a disenchanted world. He also thinks that enchantment, I mean, he doesn't use the word, Marx doesn't use the word enchantment, but he would say enchantment is related to religion. And the way that the modern world is enchanted is through commodity fetishism, right? Religion has left its place to commodity fetishism to kind of fool people not to see their real conditions. Yeah, their conditions of being exploited by the system, by capitalist system. And I was thinking, for example, what would Weber think of Times Square in terms of his um, discussion around disenchantment of the modern world, right? It is like a place of advertising, and a lot of people, not now obviously, but so it's a spectacle of of some sense, and it's a very enchanted place if you come to think of it. Yeah. And also we were saying that not every society, not every culture followed the same path of secularization, capitalism, modernization, and some people, for example, we were saying they still pursue practices of animism or spirituality or shamanism, right? So, but Weber doesn't argue that neither. Weber is trying to outline the relationship between capitalism and Protestantism in Europe. And he would say that we like secularization is the process that European people lived through. So he's not generalizing his theory in that sense. And yeah, actually, I was thinking like Doostdar's article, The Iranian Witch, also shows that how the world is still enchanted, and that enchantment, especially in mm, big city centers continue to be interrelated with different forces, right? In that article, we see that the Iranian witch, like the practices that Mercedes is doing, is very much related to capitalism, or, for example, psychology. She's also studying psychology and kind of mixing those very um, seemingly, like, we tend to think of those practices as like contradicting with one another, but when we look at Mercedes practicing those, we see that, oh, it's actually it's a mix of different things. And in people's lives, those domains, religion or witchcraft or psychology, they do not stand in opposition to one another, but people make use of them in various ways. I will come to that. I will come to that article. But just, I think the article speaks directly to the question of how, if the world is disenchanted or not. And I think we kind of agree that it is not disenchanted, but it is enchanted in different ways, in a different way that it used to be. And it's a good article to dwell on how so. So let's look at this chapter of Weber's Asceticism and the Spirit of Capitalism. So, as some of you were saying in your responses, I think it was Violet saying like Weber is jumping around. He really is, especially in this article. Um, but he's kind of detailing more the relationship between the spirit of capitalism and Protestantism, right? And he's saying that the spirit of capitalism is this behavior of asceticism. It's just working in the sake of working, trying to earn more money just to earn more money, and condemn idleness, condemn luxury. As as Anna was saying in her response paper, he's I think he's doing a good job to compare and contrast different religions. He's giving examples from Catholicism and Judaism. For example, he's saying that in Judaism we see a kind of adventurous capitalism, and but in Protestantism, especially in Calvinism, not in different sects, he's also exploring the different sects, and he's saying that Calvinism precisely leads to this spirit of capitalism that advocates for this ascetic behavior. Yeah, working in the sake of working and earning money just to earn money. One of the interesting things about this article for me was the understanding of calling. Calling, and I think Crystal and Amrit talked about this in their reflection papers. Calling in the sense of we have a very secular understanding of finding the job, finding the right job in our lives, the understanding of the division of labor, that everyone has an occupation and everyone kind of sustain one another through this division of labor, right? Someone is doctor, someone is a teacher, someone is a shoemaker, so society sustains through division of labor. Uh, and a spiritual calling, like our purpose in life. And Weber is kind of discovering or exploring a really interesting link between Protestantism and this division of labor. He's saying that this calling was actually rooted in Protestantism. So Protestantism, Calvinism was um, obliging, sort of, like, not even motivating, but obliging people to find their calling in a more secular sense, like find the right job to do. So, yeah, even if you think of this idea of division of labor and calling in that sense finding the right job in a very secular sense, Weber is linking it back to religion again. That's what he does. Yeah, and then he's saying that this capitalism, this asceticism, yeah, he's emphasizing that the spirit of capitalism is making the world an ascetic place, like a joyless place, where the sports are condemned. For example, he's talking about sexual relationships in the marriage. He says that sexual pleasure is condemned, it's only for making children. Or, for example, art is condemned. And then and then life has become this gray world of bureaucracy in a way. That's the iron cage, you know. You just do not. You're not allowed to enjoy life, but your calling is to work without enjoying life. And I think that's something to discuss in a way. We discussed this in the class. I remember. So we discussed that, for example, in New York, working has become the center of life, but I mean, also we can discuss if art has completely disappeared or not. What is the place of sports in 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 our contemporary world or in the modern world? Because, for example, one of his arguments around sports is that sports is allowed only to maintain your health. Like you're, in a way, it's not to enjoy life, but it's again make you to go to work again. And then he's saying at the end of the article, he's saying that religion is kind of living the picture. Even if the religion, Protestantism, was the root of the spirit of capitalism, in by the time, because he is writing from the 19th century, talking about the 16th century, and he's saying that religions religion has left the picture of this capitalist world. He is saying on page 119, then the intensity of the search for the kingdom of God commenced gradually to pass over into sober economic virtue. The religious roots died out slowly, giving way to utilitarian worldliness. So we are left with this secular, disenchanted world. Even if this the root of this secular and disenchanted world was in Protestantism, now we don't see that link anymore. I think yeah, this is all about Weber, and this is the end of our theoretical texts. Actually, we will be reading things more similar to Doostdar's article. I mean, Doostdar is so. This article, I really like it, and I see that most of you also liked it, so it's nice. He's a scholar. He's in Chicago, University of Chicago Divinity School actually, and he's Iranian. He works on Iranians' encounter with the supernatural. So, as you see in this little short text, he writes on spiritual movements, he writes on witchcraft, and this is not a scholarly text, and but I think even if it's not a scholarly text, he's making good points, and making good points without making it complicated or sophisticated as a scholarly article tends to be sometimes, not always. So we see Mercedes right? She actually teaches Doostdar how to do witchcraft. Like we see that the article begins by that scene. And I think Stephanie was saying this in her comment, saying that oh, it's nice to kind of get the perspective of the person, of the practitioner, instead of people writing about those practices. And I agree. This is like a different shift. And actually, those stories also saying that these, for example, witchcraft is thought very differently by the institutions or by the Iranian state than people themselves practice it or think of it in relation to other domains of life. So, for example, if you think of how the writers, the early anthropologists, were um, separating religion, witchcraft, magic, secularism with one another, right? They were just saying that these are um, bounded spheres, very different from one another. But boom, in the first paragraph, we see that actually she is doing the magic of Islamic talismanic magic. Yeah, she's discussing the symbols of Islamic talismanic magic. So we see that actually in Mercedes' practice, she roots the witchcraft, the magic in Islam, and she doesn't think that they're in opposition or they are different than one another, right? And she doesn't only do like witchcraft, but she Lustar was saying that she reads cards, she reads coffee grounds. She's also, I think, she studies psychology. She does counseling. So she kind of mixes all these in her own way. Yeah, and for her, they're not separate at all. She's like, I'm making use of them as I find fitting. Yeah, so he's saying in page um, 38, he's saying in the second column, he's saying for public intellectuals worried about a resurgence of superstition, witchcraft has been explicable in terms of everything from the failure of modernization to ignorant attempts at assuaging economic anxieties and social uncertainties to governmental indoctrination to foreign schemes for corrupting public piety. More than more often than not, these accounts are gendered, identifying gullible women and girls as the hapless victims of charlatans, sexual predators, and drug dealers who sell them chimerical dreams for the price of their wealth, health, and chastity. Rare is the analysis that places modern witchcraft in the context of individualistic aspiration set against more than 2 decades of economic privatization and the increasing valorization of personal responsibility and agency. So what he's saying here is that witchcraft is being taught as superstitious, as a sign of backwardness, as something that women are fooled by, as something that belongs to lower socioeconomic class by institutions, by states. But he's saying that there are few anthropologists who went to ground and looked at these practices and saw that actually they're not marginalized, but they are very much interrelated with other practices that come out of this neoliberal age since 2 decades of economic privatization, he says, right? And we see that we see how Mercedes uses the witchcraft in that way. Yeah, he, Doostdar is saying that she is trying to better off her economic situation, and she's also very much mixing these practices with energy healing, with again psychological counseling. So, yeah, by pop psychology seminars, self help literature, and a heavy dose of New Age spirituality for the attainment of consumerist desires and dreams of social mobility. So, actually, he's discovering here that how in our age everything is interrelated because witchcraft, Islam, spiritualism, and neoliberalism, we all see those and how they mm, affect Mercedes' actions and practices in sophisticated ways. Yeah, let me see. Yeah. So I thought it was very interesting because she is doing counseling, and on page 42 we see her talking to a client, and then in that counseling session, um, like psychology counseling session, she begins talking about prayers and she begins talking about spirituality. So I was like, wow, it's so interesting to see that those things that we think separately, that we think that they are separate, they begin to be much more interrelated. And yeah, I think one of the things that I would like to discuss further on is that what do you think of this emergence of spirituality in the US, for example, and how is it? Do you think that magic and witchcraft or shamanism or spiritualism, they are re-emerging, or that they were lost and there is a re-emergence of them? And how do you think them in terms of economic conditions? For example, I don't know, what is the relationship with this emergent spiritualism with hipsters, let's say? Yeah, what is the socioeconomic background of people who practice those emergent re-enchantments of the world? Yeah, or do you think that this is not a re-enchantment? There has been um, consistent, not even survival, but continuance of these kinds of practices. Yeah, I think this is all. Let me see. Yeah, stay well. I hope you're all doing well. Mm, Also, if you watch, yeah, put a comment or put a like so that I understand that you have access, you received the video, you watched it. Um, Make it easy on yourselves. Yeah, take good care. That's the most important in these crazy times. Bye.